Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin and crypto, taking a macroscopic view, looking at the charts and the indicators, such as the rainbow chart, to see where we are now in the cycle and what we are looking for as far as Bitcoin topping, getting towards alt season, all those sorts of things. So let's start off with crypto fear and greed. And as you can see, we are in the 30s, so still in fear territory. However, we have been in extreme fear recently or not too long ago. So after spiking up in later November and eventually getting to around 109K, Bitcoin has just been falling a bit, around 30%. However, since bottoming in fear, we are seeing higher highs, higher lows. Maybe this can be somewhat of a leading indicator for things to come. Going over to seasonality, we can also see that March tends not to be one of the better months for crypto. You can see the average return is one of the lowest out there, but April to May tends to be a very good time for crypto, seasonality wise. Same with October and November. But overall, all these years, as you look through it, December through March tends not to be the best. And when February has not been good, March has tended to be a dud as well. So you can see every time February is kind of sucked, March hasn't been so great. However, we can take a look at this and see that when we had a bad February, that things turned around later. When we had a bad February and March, turned around a little bit later, and then, not a good summer here. Bad February and March 2020, and then things started to get very good. This was when we started about a 1 year trend towards that alt season that happened in April 21. So we'll see. As far as something macro to keep in your mind, and that is alt season. So a lot of people, they get into crypto not just to buy Bitcoin, but to buy altcoins or to get into Bitcoin mining stocks, which I also do videos on. So subscribe if you want to hear more about that. I do technical analysis on the price action. But there are some charts and indicators to show us where are we as far as alt season and what can we look for as far as when we are heading in this direction for alt season. So I'll go over those a little bit later in this video. And even though I talked about this maybe a month or so ago, this 15% pullback has turned into a 30% pullback. However, overall, you can see that this is not unusual, that as we go towards the tops, that we can expect these pullbacks. And I do not believe that we have had alt season. In fact, the charts prove that as well. And in the past, when we have gotten alt season, that is when Bitcoin becomes too expensive to buy, which means Bitcoin is topped or in the process of topping. So those are things to look for as far as Bitcoin and alt season. Just to put it plainly, as far as the alt season index, you can see that we are making higher highs, higher lows, and we are in the lowerish area of that. So might possibly be a decent time to chip away at some altcoins, a dollar cost average in. And as far as the rainbow chart, we can see here, and this is a logarithmic regression chart. Log, it goes up by factors of 10 on the logarithmic scale, and it regresses, it becomes less volatile, flattens out over time. But what we can see here, and this happens in the past as well, is that when we get these big moves up, we tend to draw back a color band or two, typically on the way to the top. So after the bottom here, we did have that mid-cycle top and COVID, but you can see this was a 3 color band drop. Eventually it got to 4, which is pretty crazy. And as far as this cycle goes, we've gone up 2 color bands, gone down a color band. Okay, gone up a few, gone down 2 or so color bands. We're going down 2 color bands right now. So just by visually looking at this rainbow chart, what that would tell me is that on average, we might be expecting a bottom sometime soon, hopefully. But if it was to go deeper, and we are just taking into consideration where the lower end of this color band is, that would be around the 70K area. So I'm not saying we have to get there. But I'll show you on the charts why that would be a target around the 70K area, or even if you wanted to go even lower, somewhere in the mid to high 50Ks. I'll get into why those would be price targets for people. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but just why those targets might be. Again, with mining stocks and altcoins, do videos on that, do live streams where we get into technical analysis and we try to find in the charts, is now a good time to buy? I try to answer that essential question. So as far as Bitcoin, I know there's a lot going on here, but you can see that Bitcoin came down to its 50-week moving average and has had a little bit of a bounce up. So this is nice seeing Bitcoin hit that 50-week moving average and have a positive effect. So far so good. We did see Bitcoin get to the 50-week moving average in last August and September, and that did mark the bottom. So it's not to say that we might hit it again or even go a little bit lower before spiking up, but it is good to see the 50-week moving average holding this gold orange line. The 50 WMA, that is the dividing line for a lot of people between an asset that is bullish or bearish. And if Bitcoin were to get under the 50-week moving average and possibly become bearish in that trend, I do adjust my dollar cost average strategy a little bit. I look for more confirmation on the weekly and monthly time frames instead of just buying the discounts. So speaking of that the 50K area, we can see that if Bitcoin were to get back down to its former all-time high area, that is around 69K, and that we also have the 888 at 58K. So remember what I talked about on the rainbow chart, and that is where we see those numbers pop up here as well, at least on the fibs. Now going over to the daily, what I do want to see here is what is Bitcoin's reaction going to be around the 20-day moving average, that's this thin red line, and the 200-day moving average. So we can see right now we're not even testing the 200-day too much and already coming down a little bit. We have a few doji candles here and not even touching the moving averages. So to me, that's saying there's some weakness, and also doji candles mean undecided. So there's weakness, there's indecisiveness in this market. So that right there is saying that if we don't really give a good challenge to that 86K area, I might expect to see us come down further into this channel, again into the 70K range, and possibly even lower, maybe somewhere like 73K. But that would be an area to watch for. And this has all been playing out ever since Bitcoin got up to the 1618 fib. And you can see that, drew from the high to the low. This fib line here is the 1618. Let me show you that right here at around 102K. And Bitcoin never really closed above that 1618. We can go to the weekly, shows us even better. We have candle wicks, but no candle bodies. So right now, we'll see what happens. We do have the 20-week moving average there at around 88K. But again, if we do come lower, then I would not be surprised to see Bitcoin possibly resting on that 50-week or even challenging a little bit lower. So we're not seeing a lot of strength right now. Going into other indicators to look at, a couple that I find interesting. One is the RSI. As far as this cycle is concerned, and let's get rid of a couple of these things. We don't need our fib anymore, so let's get rid of that. Clean this up a little bit. As far as the RSI, this is our relative strength index. Shows how overbought or oversold we are. Now, ever since we've been going up from the very bottom during this cycle, you can see that the RSI has not gotten much lower than this. We got this low in August of 23, in August of 2024, and then just recently. So as far as the strength, we haven't seen it dip lower. Now, this isn't always a one-to-one correlation as far as price goes, but if you're just taking a look at the local price in here, that as far as those dips in the RSI, they can be somewhat close to where the bottoms are. Now, I'm not fully convinced here, just because what I showed you on the daily, and I do want to see the RSI hold up here instead of just coming up and then going further down. So we'll see how much of a correction this does eventually turn out to be. But if we go to the daily and measure that out from that 109K area, you can see that we had a 30% correction. And as far as this cycle, that has not happened since last August. Overall, and you can see that right there. Overall, in this cycle, you can see that we've had a number of 20% corrections, but now we are getting our second 30% correction. So all these little corrections right here, these were about 20%, give or take 20%, but we've just recently had one of the largest corrections this whole cycle. So with all that being said, I think that's some stuff to keep in perspective as far as being maybe bullish or looking for some good news on the horizon. Again, April tends to be a better month, and so hopefully we see Bitcoin sort of show us a good bottoming process here. As far as the stochastic RSI, this would be something else that's very positive to see, is that we are seeing the stochastic just recently start to flip positive on the weekly. Now that's a good thing, but as far as the stochastic being positive, it can still go lower, and you can see this happen last year from May to September, is that this can go in waves. So glass half full, we are seeing it go up. Glass half empty, you would want to see this start to curl up and stay up and not chop around in the oversold area. One of the most important indicators I think y'all should be watching for is the MACD indicator right here. And when this has flipped positive to green, you can see that is when we've started these big bullish movements up this cycle. So the last two times we flipped positive in the green, we've had very nice moves in Bitcoin. The time before, we were green for a while, kind of seeing some bullish divergence, if you will. This was flipping positive, and we did bottom, but then eventually came up and started this whole upward cycle trend. So the MACD eventually flipping positive will be a very good thing. Now, we have a ways to go for that, probably another month or so until we for sure see that confirmation. But definitely keep the MACD as an indicator watch on the weekly. And when this thing looks like it's getting ready to come up, then we might see some really, really good price action for Bitcoin. All right, let's start to try to get into the question about alt season. When is alt season going to happen? Now, this is one of the best charts for watching for alt season. This is Bitcoin dominance. When we have 62% Bitcoin dominance, that means 62% of all money in crypto is in Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin becomes too expensive to buy, that means it is topped or is topping, and you see that rotation into the altcoins. So here we see that when that dominance falls off like a cliff, this is where Bitcoin tops. That is when Bitcoin dominance falls. And if we go back over to our chart here, we'll zoom out a little bit and we'll add on Bitcoin dominance to prove this. So as we can see here, this is where Bitcoin topped. All right. Now, as Bitcoin topped, where was Bitcoin dominance dropping? It was right here. So after Bitcoin topped, we see Bitcoin dominance eventually drop. That's when you see that rotation. Here we go. From Bitcoin into Ethereum, large caps, small caps, and it only happens over the course of a month. Last cycle, 2021. We can see this is where Bitcoin dominance was around at its general lows, but as Bitcoin was topped or topping, if you will, that's when we had this fall in Bitcoin dominance. And this is something you do want to be careful of, is that if you're not pulling profits in here, you can see that Bitcoin did have this from May until, well, really just June. It had a 52% drop. So if you're not watching Bitcoin dominance and taking profits when you're in this quick rotation that only takes about a month, then Bitcoin can fall off a cliff right after. This happened in 2018 as well. So you can see after Bitcoin dominance dropped, this was January 8th. I'll never forget it. From January 8th to these bottoms, Bitcoin dropped about 65%. So it went from around 20K all the way down to 6K. And so there is this, again, it's a 2 to 4 week rotation, 2 to 4 week massive rotation, but that only happens when Bitcoin tops. So do keep that in mind as far as this cycle is concerned. This cycle, Bitcoin dominance is still going up. And we can take that off now so it's not redundant. Bitcoin dominance is still going up. So we have yet to see this come down. However, when we take a look at certain indicators such as, let's take a look at the ultimate RSI, we can see it's been overbought for some time. And we have yet to see Bitcoin dominance get oversold. So I'm hoping we might be getting near top soon and headed in that downward direction. Now, there are some other charts to watch for to see if we are heading in that direction. And one of those charts is total 3 divided by Bitcoin. And you can see here I have a fib drawn from the low to the high. But as far as total 3, that's the total market cap of all cryptos outside the top 2. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, you take all the market cap of everything outside those two. Every other crypto combined is 48% of the market cap of Bitcoin. And I do think this is showing us a nice sort of rounding, bottoming process. And if we see this start to spike up, and maybe we'll keep this ultimate RSI on, if we see this start to trend upwards, that would be a good sign. If we start to see this become overbought on the RSI, maybe we can see this start to head in a positive direction. So as far as Bitcoin dominance, it is in the process of topping or is yet to top. And as far as total 3 divided by Bitcoin, we are bottoming out, but maybe we're seeing some positive divergence here to the upside. Let's take a look at another chart, and that's others divided by Bitcoin. Now, others is the total market cap of all altcoins outside the top 10. So not just Bitcoin and Ethereum, but all these guys, everything underneath Tron. So if we go others divided by Bitcoin, we also see a similar trend that when Bitcoin is topping right here, okay, you can see the date down there. When Bitcoin is topping, that's when we see others-Bitcoin topping as well, going into alt season. Alt season was finishing by May of 21 right here. But what do we see again? We see others Bitcoin topping out. Now right here, you can see that the others Bitcoin chart, at least strength-wise, it is in a bottom area. But what do we see here as well? We see higher strength or a higher base of strength moving up right here. I'll draw a trend line just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. When we are going higher in the strength but lower in the price, that's what's known as bullish divergence. The strength is diverging from the price action. So with that being said, maybe, hopefully, we are in the process of the trend, the price action eventually following to the upside. So that's what we want to see. We want to see things turn around. In 2021, you can see there really wasn't divergence here totally. It went up. It got to the overbought area in August, came back down. So there was divergence here at the very base, but this was very oversold to very overbought. And then here in 2017, I guess a little bit of divergence there if you want to call it that. But that's something that at least the ultimate RSI is showing us. And as far as others Bitcoin, it's also in the lower area of this channel. So those would be promising things to look for. And that the market cap, by the way, of all the altcoins outside the top 10, they have about 14% the market cap of Bitcoin. Now Ethereum, not been doing so well. And Ethereum Bitcoin is at about 0.14, so 14% of Bitcoin's value. It's definitely getting into the lower areas of the range that it's been within. And so, again, could we see this start to come up a little bit? If we take a look at one of our RSI indicators, this is just on the weekly. Hmm. I mean, this looks like it wants to bottom out further, and it might, but this has just been weakening overall. So, not as strong of a divergence. There was some divergence here, but then it's just been getting weaker overall. So, this could be double bottoming. If we go, monthly's not showing us anything too different. Maybe if we go for another RSI, maybe our stochastic, we can see here that, yeah, this is still bottoming out strength wise. So probably still has a little bit down to go, which might not be the best indicator for Ethereum. So we'll see about that. Anyways, at the start of this video, we're talking about the macro view of Bitcoin and crypto and alt season. What this is telling me, at least in the short term, is that maybe expect some further downside. Again, we had those moving averages on. If we're not able to really challenge these moving averages any better, I would not be shocked to see a little bit further downside. However, as far as the alt season indexes, as far as Bitcoin dominance, as far as others Bitcoin, total 3 Bitcoin, I do think that there's some level of process or of promise that these are getting overbought, or that we have the RSI showing divergence, and that we want to see, and this isn't just going to happen overnight. We will see this probably play out over the course of many months, where we'll see that rotation happen, that the price action follows the strength in those indexes. So right now we haven't even had confirmation that Bitcoin dominance is topped and is for sure heading in the other direction. I would be taking a look at Bitcoin dominance getting under its 50-week moving average, which it's only tested once. But I want to see what happens here. Bitcoin dominance is definitely in this upward trend. I want to see if it gets back to the 64% area. We saw a big wick there. Might we see a topping process around this 62 to 64% area where we can see dominance start to curl over? If that starts to happen over the course of this year until later this year, that would fall in line with the 4-year cycle theorists. And you can see here, quarter 4, 2017, there was a top. Quarter 4, 2013, there was a top. Quarter 4, 2021, there was a top. Another 4 years, would that mean quarter 4? And I'm even willing to stretch it out. Quarter 1, 2026, maybe. But that's what we would want to see, is we would want to see on Bitcoin dominance this turnover, that it's starting to come down. But as I showed you earlier in the video, you need to have a plan now, because when there's that massive rotation, it lasts about 2 to 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks at best last cycle. But once that dominance rotation is done, once this massive rotation finishes out and gets to the top, then you see Bitcoin in 2018 do a 60% correction. In 2021, it did a 50% correction in the months to come. Not even, it took a month or two. So you do want to make sure that you have an exit strategy if you're looking to make any money from altcoins. And you have to pick the right altcoin, first of all, because there's no guarantee what altcoin is going to do good or not good. Usually the higher market cap, the miners are some that you can feel somewhat safer with, but there's no guarantee in any of these. But in this video, I did want to outline that our Bitcoin dominance charts, our altcoin charts, are showing divergence. There are things to be hopeful for. However, the price action, we might still see a little bit of weakness here before we start to see that flip, that turnaround, where the altcoins start to do pretty well in comparison to Bitcoin. Okay, as that slowly builds, watch for this. When we do get to the next alt season, people will be saying that these alts will never go down again. It's what's happened the last cycle, and it's what's happened the cycle before. So you'll see people saying Dogecoin going to $20, XRP going to $100, and it'll never get there. But when you start seeing that language and you see Bitcoin getting up into these orange, maybe even red band areas, somewhere 155 to 200K, then you want to be cautious. When Bitcoin gets too expensive to buy, you get that rotation and it lasts about a month. At least that's what it's been the last two cycles. So, anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. And yeah, also comment how you're feeling about Bitcoin's current price action. Do you feel that we are close to a bottom? And or if not, where are you expecting a bottom to be? So if you don't believe that this 50-week moving average in the high 70s is the bottom, what are you looking for? And how are you feeling about where Bitcoin is at right now? So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all had a fantastic Monday and that you have a great rest of your week. Take care.